Are you a leader navigating burnout, doubt, or growth? Welcome to the Ripple Effect Leadership Podcast, where intentional leadership creates lasting impact. Hi, I'm Jen Brown with my co-host Hugo Rodriguez, and we're diving into real leadership stories and practical insights to help you lead with clarity, courage, and connection. Because we believe great leadership creates positive ripples at work and in life. Hi, I'm Jen Brown, a leadership coach with Journey of Grace Coaching and a former U.S. diplomat with over 20 years of experience with the U.S. Department of State, where I had the pleasure of serving with my good friend and co-host, Hugo Rodriguez. Hugo, over to you.
Thank you, Jen. And really, the pleasure was mine. I enjoyed all of our opportunities to work together during my foreign service career. Now that we are joining each other on this podcast, I really look forward to these opportunities. As Jen said, I was a foreign service officer with the Department of State. I'm now a professor of practice and leadership and an executive coach and occasional podcaster with Jen. Jen, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we're going to go a little deeper on leadership versus management. Let me backtrack that. Leadership and management, because they have to go hand in hand. They are not really two separate entities because organizations don't exist if you don't have both. And so what we're hearing from people we're engaged with and from our own experiences is knowing how to be both. How to put on the leadership hat, when to switch to the management hat, and what that elevation looks like in one's career, because we often start.
So before we get into that part of the discussion, I'd be curious about how you define one versus the other. For you, what is management and what is leadership? Because unfortunately, I hear those terms used interchangeably quite often.
Well, I'm going to give you the Jen Brown response to that based on my experience and people who have influenced me, such as John Maxwell. So I'm a big John Maxwell coach. Leadership is influence, and we all have influence at home, at work, in the community. It's what we do with influence when we have followers. So it is setting vision. It is leading people. It is taking care of the bigger picture. Management is all about the how-to. For me, management is the operational piece of getting things done. How would you define it, Hugo?
So I will just say that what you say there is very much the way John Hillen, who I teach in one of my classes, he's kind of done it all. He's a Renaissance man, and he has a couple of leadership books out there. He was a CEO. He was a senior officer in the military. He was a senior officer at the State Department. And he says that leadership is the why, the where, the what, and the by whom. Yeah. And the management is the how. Mm-hmm. For me, to answer your question, I tend to just two big buckets, right? You lead people and you manage things. You manage budgets, you manage physical resources, physical plant, you manage time, but people you lead. And mentally for me has always been how I break it down. And I'll use this example in my classes, if you are an accountant at a big firm and your job is to work on the team that does the budget, you are managing your time, and you're managing the firm's money, and you are managing your spreadsheets. Those are all management things. When you then get promoted to be the leader of the accounting team, you may still have responsibilities for the budget, but you are also leading the team.
Yes.
And a manager will look out across that floor and say, I have 8 position descriptions. But a leader will look out at that floor and say, I have 8 people who bring their unique talents and skills, the things they do well, the things they maybe haven't learned to do yet. And I will bring them all together to achieve greatness here in the accounting department, right?
The
That is what a
managers,
leader does.
exactly. So the manager is going to make sure that the manager has the right resources, position descriptions. The leader is going to be asking, do I have the right people in those positions?
Right.
It's
And
part of
then
that visioning.
taking their skills and like an orchestra conductor, you know, bringing in a little of this and quieting out a little of that, and you are working all of that magic of that alchemy, and again understanding what each person brings so that you can, as a uniform whole, get the most out of that team.
This is a little simplified, right? It sounds so easy. Yet, for all of our leaders out there, you are still managing because there's an operational piece to every leader's job. And well, maybe not if you're the CEO at a super high level, but even then, you still need to know budgets, right?
But
You
you
still
all
need to have some understanding of how the management piece works and be ready to go with that. So here's like the challenge as people come in, they get really good in the area where they're hired, then they get promoted. And they might still be really good at what they're doing. Maybe it's a small team, they're getting by. The next promotion, or they're in a small business and maybe they're the founder, right? And as a founder, you're doing it all. Trust me, I know. I lead, I manage, I'm doing it all. But as you grow and you're stepping into that next layer of leadership, we'll say, how do you intentionally know when to switch the hat you're wearing?
This is the challenge that everybody has, right? Like the best accountant, the best salesperson, is often picked then to be the next leader of the team based on their skill and their performance in that thing and those technical managerial responsibilities. And their tendency is to want to do that more and louder and bigger, right? And you look around you and you wonder, why can't everybody do this as well as I can do?
Ooh,
That
as
lens,
well as I can do. That's a
yeah,
home run right there.
yeah.
That hits me. Yeah.
And the challenge is to realize what you need, the skills you need to bring as a leader may not be the ones you developed when you were the best accountant, right? And so we have to find it within ourselves to go from being the top dog and the expert to kind of being a beginner again. And breaking out your time, right? Yes, you may still have managerial responsibilities. You're definitely going to continue to get things like email and those technical things that are going to continue to come. But now you have a responsibility for leading those people on your team and understanding what they need and knowing what they bring and figuring all of those things out. And this is really, really tough. How do you do it? It's going to be a little bit different for everybody. But one thing is you have to slow down and realize what got you here isn't going to get you to the next, get you success for the next promotion. And you really have to start thinking about, all right, when I first started, I had to learn to develop a whole bunch of managerial skills. Now I've got to learn to develop a bunch of leadership skills. How am I going to do that? Be very deliberate about it.
So a few things stand out to me in hearing this, right? So those skills, those managerial skills that got you where you are, super important to still have that understanding and know that you're not supposed to be the expert anymore as you rise up, right? You're hiring the right people to be that expert for you and taking that time to really make sure they're trained. As you're stepping more and more into the leadership space, I look at it as that I need to time block to have that vision and strategic thinking so that I am looking at the broader picture that's out there. As the manager, right? I'm looking at how am I time blocking for reviews, accountability, operational efficiencies. So still time blocking, but the scope is different. And so switching from that manager to leadership role, let's talk about the strategic planning piece for a moment. because that's the vision that helps us to actually lead people. If we don't have a vision, what are we leading them with? Right? So in the private sector, working on the business versus in the business, taking that time to have the vision, to think through what a strategic plan looks like. Coming from the government space, taking that time to look at where do we want policy to go? Where do we want our team to grow? How do we shape the next quarter, the next year? That is not something that comes, at least in my experience, that came naturally being that manager person that was constantly putting out fires. And as a leader, the tendency, as you said, is I wanted to hang on to the things that I knew how to do well. Even when my team wasn't maybe giving me exactly what I needed, it was easier for me to fix it.
Just do more.
Just
Like
do
I'm just
more.
going to do more of the technical stuff.
I know I need to do the strategic planning. I know I need to be in the leadership role. But, I have all these people bringing stuff to me. It's not quite right. So let me just fix it.
And doesn't that feel good? Like,
I'm the savior.
oh, I could rewrite that. I could fix that. I know how to program that. Like, I'm the best at this stuff. So I'm just going to keep doing the thing I'm really good at because it gives me all those warm fuzzies, right?
Yeah.
And yet that is no longer the most important part of your job. So there are a couple of pieces here. To stick with the strategic, regardless of where you are in an organization, you need to do strategic thinking. So if you're early career and you're leading a small team, you may think, wow, strategic, that sounds like something that the CEO needs to do, or the CFO, right, to do that strategic planning. But at every level of the organization, you need to understand, okay, here's what my division is responsible for. Here's what my boss is going to be graded on. And here's my piece of that. And here's how I'm going to help my boss succeed, my boss's division succeed, our, wing of the company succeed, right? Breaking all of that down, you need to be spending some time quarterly, annually, daily, thinking about, okay, here's where we are. To call ourselves a success, we need to be here, and how are we going to kind of get there? What are the kinds of things that are working for us? What's not working for us? Where do we want to double down? These are all things that a leader kind of has to have in their mental mix. You do not need to have all the answers. In fact, these are conversations you should be having with your boss and with your team. Because it's all well and good for you to set some, really ambitious goals. But if your team does not believe they can get there with the resources they've got, it's all wasted. So talking with your team, what can we accomplish? What do you need to get to that, that level plus a little bit more? Having a conversation with your boss. Hey, boss, we think we can give you this. We might be able to give you more if you can give us some of these resources, right? Yeah. That's the strategic piece. The opposite of strategic is reactive. Let's just keep doing the thing we were doing. And this brings me back to another point, which is that when you were just a technical person and your job was to come in and assemble widgets, and you were the fastest widget assembler on the team, you could do it faster and better than others because, I don't know, you have natural widget assembling gifts, right? And then they come in and they say, okay, we need a new boss because your boss is moving on to great things. And hey, Hugo, you're the fastest widget assembler. We're going to make you the boss, right? I am stepping into that role thinking, okay, my strength is widget assembling. So I'm going to keep widget assembling. I'm just going to react. When they want more widgets, I'll widget faster. I'll ask my people to widget faster. I'm going to wonder why they can't widget as fast as me. But I was born with natural gifts, and so that's why I'm now the boss. And that misses a couple of things. One, the strategic piece we just talked about. Yeah. Because you have to understand how your organization, your little piece of that organization, fits in, contributes, and helps bring success to the whole organization. The other piece it misses is because you were the best widget assembler, you probably didn't get a lot of help and feedback from your boss. You thought you were self-made. You're stepping into this role like, look what I did. I out-widgeted everybody, and now I'm the boss. But what the boss needs to do is be the creator of widget assemblers. And so you have that also that strong wind blowing against you, which is you thought you got this job for reason A, and it actually turns out what is required is reason B.
Yes.
Okay. And so this is where we all stumble as we grow, right? We think we were hired to do A, and in fact, greatness lies in doing B. Greatness lies in helping the other folks around you raise their game. And so as a leader, you need to go back to square one. Okay, what does my boss need from me? Where is greatness? It is not simply in me widgeting my behind off. I have to figure those things out, just like I did on day one when they told me I was the new widget assembler. I had to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
You can do it. You figured out how to do the great, how to be great at job A. You could figure out how to do job B, but don't be confused. The job they've hired you into is very, very different, and you are starting again from scratch. I just wanted to make sure you know this is very common. We all go through this, and we are set up for failure until we are ready to take off the hat of being the best widget assembler and put on the hat of being the new guy who needs to figure out how to lead. Does that make sense?
Oh, so true. So true. Because as that leader, it's setting the vision, understanding the bigger vision, setting the vision for the team and communicating that and getting that team on board with you. And only when they are on board with you will they become the best widget makers, to use your analogy. And so when we think about how do we communicate that, sometimes, right, that leader is also the manager. So it's the vision along with setting what success looks like. What are the KPIs? What are the metrics that will determine when someone is doing a great job and when the company is or the organization is successful? So sometimes one person is literally putting on different hats. In one case, you might be in a meeting with an employee and you're both leader and manager. So the manager is covering the operational standards, the feedback of, are you hitting your targets? The leader in that meeting, with the same meeting with the employee, is what's going on here? What do you need? Where can we support you? Getting that leader to step forward. So I just want to dive into that because sometimes we think that leadership and management are kind of separate, but in fact, you are both. And in some cases, you're both in one meeting.
It is, and I would be really interested in your perspective on this. I don't think I have ever met someone who was in that position, who has both management and leadership responsibility. I don't think I've ever met anyone who neglected the management side of that equation. Most people I've met have a real hard time not neglecting the leadership side of that equation, because what got them there was the management side. And so they're very comfortable doing
that. That is our default because it is the operational how piece that you talked about. Mm-hmm. We can wrap our heads around the how. When we deal with people, that becomes a challenge because now we have real human beings with their real life experiences in front of us. Yep. So we are accounting for someone's background. We may have we probably have different communication styles. We not have to, but as leaders, we get to have hard conversations. And I say get to, not that they're fun, but they are development tools. They are helpful, whether or not the person likes it, for the employee. They are helpful for the organization to make sure you have the right employees there. So they are a get to responsibility as leadership. And even though, again, I wouldn't say I jump for joy to do those, they are an incredibly useful conversation to have. And that is a gift of leadership.
For sure. And you know what? The first ones are going to be super uncomfortable. So your natural reaction is, "Ugh, I don't want to do that. That's terrible, right? I'm going to have to deal with this, icky human issues, right? And the uncomfortable things around that. And so you avoid it and you go back to doing those management things that got you to that job, right?
That's it.
Or, I have 75 emails that have come in this morning. I've got to get to all of those first. I'll get to the icky interpersonal stuff later. And later gets pushed to tomorrow and next week and blah, 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 and it never gets fixed. And all of a sudden you've got a morale problem. You have to learn, as the world's best widget person, how to stop making widgets for some percentage of your day and dedicate that time to connecting with the humans on your team. We've talked about the importance of one-on-one conversations, open-ended questioning, right? Learning from your people, understanding what motivates them, what growth they're looking to have, what they do well, what they don't do well, right? All of those things are all of a sudden a very big new time consumer on your schedule. And the trap that most people fall in is to say, I'll get to that once I've finished making my widgets for today. And that is the mistake, because the longer you're with the organization and the higher up you move, the less your widget ability is valued. And the more your ability to have hard conversations, to connect with your people, that's your moneymaker going forward.
That is the difference right there. Because, and I know I was guilty of, let me just take on my team's work or whatever because something came in late. It was a quick turn. It's time sensitive. Bad idea. Let me fix it, right? Instead of let me give it back and grow the person. Now, granted, there are a few exceptions, but I can tell you in my own experience, not as many as I took on, right? The number of times I really needed to hand it back far exceeded the times when I should have kept it myself. So I think that's a leadership trap. We just, we spend more time fixing things ourselves when the real goal is, why is this person not getting the information, not getting to the level I need them to get to? That's the leadership responsibility right there. Spending your time on that with that person instead of you doing the work.
And I wonder how many of our listeners will have heard this voice in their head saying, ugh, it's just faster if I do it myself.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I just had this conversation the other night. Yeah.
It's just faster if I do it myself. When you hear that, put on the brakes because something's not right. Shouldn't be that way. It is true that it will be slower to teach someone else how to do it. But in the long run, that's why you're there. And in the long run, it becomes faster because instead of you just doing it all, you've now empowered half a dozen people, 24 people to start being able to do this stuff well. And you've got superpower going on. This is the same thing, I'm just going to quickly say, with delegation. A lot of people think, oh, I'm the boss now. I can delegate my stuff and that'll be faster. Delegating is actually slower. Right? Because you can't just dish it off on someone else and expect they'll do it to the level that you are used to doing it. You have to help them understand, what is it we need to do? Why do we need to do it? How do we need to do it? This is 3x the amount of work.
Right.
But that is what leading requires.
And we covered that in a previous episode on this podcast, delegation and everything that's required there. It is empowering when done right. It is not a dump, but it is a necessary piece of leadership. And so this gets to this other point, right? That as you are spending more time with people, with your team, training them to do the job, if they're not getting the message, now you as the leader need to have some serious consideration. Are they the right person for that spot? Right? That is your leadership responsibility. Do they need to stay? What exactly do you need in that position?
We have to spend a second on this. Because this is something that I run into a lot, particularly with my leadership students. I got a problem child. I've got a low performer, and what I'm going to do is just let them go. As a boss, that's my job, is to say, look, you're not meeting the standard, so I'm going to let you go. Boy,
Mm.
that does sound easy, doesn't it?
Oh,
It is
no,
not easy, and
no.
I'm here to tell you that simply underperforming is not legally a reason for you to let someone go. And your
Well,
response, I'm sorry, I will disagree with you on
you're
this.
saying legally, though, and
I
there are states, right, where they're at will. I live in an at will state.
Yes, but when you may think it's at will, but there are rules around hiring and firing, and they can take you to court, and they can, if they win or lose, you're in court. You're not making widgets. And so the point of this is, I believe, and this may just be Hugo, and you and I may argue about this all day long, but I believe your job is to do everything to help that person get into shape. It would be beautiful and easy if you could just throw out with the garbage everybody who didn't meet your standards.
Yeah.
That is not what a leader does. A
No.
leader helps that person. Now, they may not be the best widget maker on your team, but they might be good at something else. Find that thing,
Yeah.
plug them into it. If you're the orchestra conductor and you've got a viola player who's not fast enough, maybe it's because they really ought to be playing the cello or whatever it is. We don't live in a world where you can throw people away at will or not at will, right? It
Yes.
doesn't work that way. And the amount of time and effort you spend letting that person go, finding the right person, hiring them, and training them, that time is much better spent helping find their greatness.
I am so grateful you said that. And I threw the at will piece out there because that is what I hear as a coach from people. I agree with everything you said, Hugo. At will or not, there are other underlying factors here. So, one, as a leader, you have a responsibility to the people on your team to train them, to try to get them where they need to be, to document that. There are HR policies, practices so that you know what your responsibilities are as a leader. Two, maybe they're not the right fit for that position, as Hugo said, maybe for another position, right? If you have that wiggle room, then you know that. Here's the other thing, though, and I want to underscore this. Yes, there's time and emotional weight involved in firing someone and in finding someone else who is the right fit.
Time and
Because
money.
if you haven't clarified what that right fit is in the first person you got rid of, now you're in a repeat mode. The second piece to that, you have team morale. When you start cycling through people, do you think your team wants to stay with you? I'd be looking for another job myself. And this is what I talk with my clients about all the time, right? How do we communicate without, getting into privacy issues with our teams to share our vision and getting the right people on a team and training people and having a team approach where you can. And I say this as someone who has had to let people go. And I know the impact that it had multiple people. Let me say that. And I worked very closely with my human resources person. So any leader, that should be like one of your number one relationships. Go to human resources and build that connection. And as you are sometimes letting people go, how are you communicating what you can with your team? And the answer is this. As a leader, I say there are no surprises. If a person was not living up to performance standards, we've had conversation and there were no surprises about that. If the person did something else that was no longer acceptable in the company, in the organization, there were no surprises about that either. So
Your team will know, right?
your
If
team
you're a
will
low
know.
performer on your team's going to know it. They're going to feel it, and they're going to want to see that situation improve.
Right.
So, in that sense, yes, absolutely, no surprises. They will know, and hopefully, you're having conversations with that low performer. I will just say, our very common reaction when we have a low performer is we get upset about that as a leader.
Right.
Like, wow, this person's an anchor dragging down the whole team, and I need to do something about it. And then you have this antagonistic relationship with that person that develops as you try to kind of tap them into shape and then spank them into shape, and then you're holding them accountable and you're micromanaging them and you're documenting everything, and it becomes very confrontational. If you have someone that is legitimately a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, not only are they not a widget maker, they couldn't find a widget with both hands, right? They are in the wrong place. A mistake was made when they were hired.
Right.
That happens.
It does.
Your best outcome as a leader is not to bash them into shape, is not to, eventually out of frustration call in HR and fire them. The best outcome that I've seen is through building trust with that person. Help them to see that they are a square peg and the round hole is not for them. And so that conversation, which is ultimately so valuable, cannot happen if there is antagonism, because they will not trust you when you sit down with them and say, I don't think this is working. What do you think? Are you happy? Do you feel like you're in the right place doing the work you were meant to do? Because I'm not getting that sense. You tell me. That if they trust you, they're going to say, you know what? I'm miserable. Yeah. I've been trying to get my square peg into this round hole. I can't make a widget to save my life. I know my coworkers resent me because I can't keep up with them. I'm a drag on this team, right? I'm miserable here. Then you as a leader with trust can say, yes, I see that this is happening. I think you have some real skills. Let me help you find the right thing for you.
Yes. And I will say, right, when I'm saying, don't just terminate immediately, I'm also not saying keep someone on the team longer than they need to be on the team if they're not the right fit.
But but the easier way as a leader is to help them acknowledge that they're on the wrong team, right? Like simply crowbarring them out.
Yeah, but sometimes people are not going to see that, or they're not going to grasp that. So sometimes you do have to get to that point of making a decision.
Right.
And in the work that I do, I believe that you don't just do that. You don't just kick them out that day, right? Like you've had some conversation, some time to try to improve the performance, make clear the expectation, get the training if that's applicable there, and to help them if all of that is not working, to help them see this isn't the best fit.
My personal error may be to try too hard too long with people, but for me as a leader, I invest in my folks. I invest in all of them, the rock stars and the folks who are, dragging an anchor with them. I try to keep in mind their fundamental humanity.
Of course.
And the difference for someone who has been, kind of summarily let go, or someone who has kind of been coached into making some hard decisions themselves to find the next thing, I think it can be a life-changing difference. And so I'm always looking for, I want to start every relationship based on trust, because I don't know where it's going to go, right? I don't want to just have trust with my high performers. I want to have trust with everybody in the office, because even the high performers can go off the rails and need, some counseling and some hard conversations. So trust is the baseline. Yeah. And then as I am working with someone, if I am able to get inside that problem, build that trust so that I can say, listen, let's work together, because I don't think you're happy. The team's not happy. This is not what you are meant to be doing. Let's help find you what you ought to be doing. It doesn't always work, like you said, sometimes you got to go with the crowbar. Sometimes you got to call in HR, and it's going to go the hard way. But as a leader, if you start with that desire to build connection and trust, you have a lot more tools in your toolbox to deal with your low performers.
Completely agree. And you establish even more trust with the higher performers, I think, as well.
Sure.
Now, sometimes the higher performers become frustrated themselves with the lower performers, right? And so it's managing all of those dynamics on a team. But, I know there's the adage of hire slowly, fire fast. And I would just put some caution. I definitely agree, hire slowly and make sure that you're doing the work you can up front. I would caution in the hire fast. I'm not saying keep someone in the wrong position indefinitely, but I am saying I believe that there are a series of steps that you need to take. And that is all in leadership. That is in leadership. Now, management influences here. So we kind of started in on this topic because this is a huge piece of leadership. People.
Yeah.
It is the vision. It is the connection with all of the stakeholders who have an impact on your organization. It is the money from the top level, right? What money is needed for that vision to grow. How, what are you doing with the money? Even though the management pieces, it really at the operational level, leaders need to understand the money piece too. And so, but then you're really people. And that's the complex piece of leadership.
Yeah, so to kind of tie that second half of our conversation back to the leadership and management piece, hire slowly. And the reason they say fire fast is a very management perspective, right? Fire fast. Because if you have the wrong person in there, the chance for lasting damage is great. But as a leader, I think there's an argument to be made for being thoughtful about the firing piece.
Completely.
Simply firing fast may send an adverse message to the rest of the team, like you were saying, right?
Yeah.
They may all start looking for the exits as well.
Yeah.
And you as a leader, in your job of building trust with everyone, is to show that you're more to this organization than simply a human that I pay. Right? You're a whole human being with all of the stuff that comes with it, and I'm going to treat you that way. I am not summarily going to dismiss you when you fail to meet the standards. I'm going to work with you to try to meet the standards, and if you can't, I'll work with you to have a soft landing somewhere else. Because that's how I want to treat everybody in the organization, how I want to be treated as a leader.
That is the leader's role of setting a company and office culture. That's what leadership is. How do you want to influence by the culture that you set? And so for our listeners and our followers, thank you so much for joining us today. This is such a passionate topic because for Hugo and me, because it's all about people really at the end of the day. And so we want to hear from you. And weigh in, tell us, what do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Where are your challenges in navigating leadership and management? Thank you, Hugo. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Ripple Effect Leadership Podcast. If this episode sparked an insight or reminded you of someone, please share it and help forward the ripple. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review so more leaders can find their way here. You can find us on LinkedIn at Jen Brown-Coach and at HF Rodriguez Jr. and more leadership content and coaching tools at journeyofgracecoaching.com. A quick heads up before you go. This podcast and all content shared by Ripple Effect Leadership is for informational and educational purposes only. The opinions and characterizations in this podcast are our own and do not necessarily represent the U.S. government. This podcast is not a substitute for mental health treatment or professional medical advice. If you are struggling, we encourage you to reach out to a licensed mental health provider or call the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You don't have to do this alone.